Weaving is so many things to so many people. It can be a functional way to provide fabric for personal and household use. It can be an artistic expression or an engaging form of recreation, or all those together. Weaving is also a powerful metaphor for life. As the service began, we sang about weaving our hearts and our lives, the bright and dark threads of our journey through a blanket of light, weaving a basket to hold all that's true. Weaving is based on two structural elements. First, the warp, the lengthwise threads that are set in place first, defining the basic dimensions and shape of the finished product on which all else is built. And then the woof, also called the weft, threads that are interlaced crosswise, chosen and interwoven to create the pattern, the color, and texture of the artistic creation that emerges from the weaver's hands. The phrase warp and woof is often used to figuratively describe the structure and process of a life, an organization, or a community, similar to how the warp and woof threads form the foundation and texture of a woven fabric. In Unitarian Universalism, we might think of love as the loom on which we build our fabric, and our values, justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. If you lose track of them, there's a picture up there on the wall and then a description of each on the bulletin board. These are the warp of our faith, these values. And then all of the specific programs and commitments are the woof, added by successive generations to create the color and texture, the unique nature of our faith and each congregation as we move through time. Weaving is an artistic expression, and the elements of the natural world, philosophical ideas, and human emotion can be integrated into the warp and woof. In the poem story I shared earlier, a young weaver learning in family tradition traces the art of weaving back through time and across cultures, an art that serves so many purposes in all our lives, linking us all in patterns of color and inspiration. We are weaving our lives, the light and dark threads of our journey through. We weave the light and dark threads of our stories, the histories of our individual lives, of the communities we create, and of history and society in which we live. This weekend, we celebrate Memorial Day, a day of memory woven from the threads of warp and woof we choose to keep and honor events in our past. Memorial Day became a federal holiday in 1971, setting aside a day in remembrance of those who have died in wars. We honor all those who have given their lives in conflict in service to the welfare of the greater whole. We also remember that not all those harmed in war are soldiers, so it is good we memorialize and take a lesson from all those we have lost to war, soldier and civilian, human and other species, currently and after the fact, around the globe and throughout time, up to this very moment. The losses of war remind us that the work of creating peace is not done, and so we remember those who have been lost. Memorial Day is also an excellent example of the choices the weavers of history make as they create the story of our past. The history books tell us that in 1865, at the end of the devastating Civil War, the tradition of Memorial Day in America was started, period. Seldom mentioned or remembered that the tradition was started by former Black slaves who had been freed during the Civil War. This occurred in Charleston, South Carolina, as Black freedmen took initiative to honor 257 dead Union soldiers who had been buried in a mass grave in a Confederate prison camp. The former slaves dug up the bodies and worked for 2 weeks, cleaning up and landscaping a new burial ground, building an enclosure and an arch labeled Martyrs of the Race Course. They invested their time, their resources, and their newly won freedom to give these unknown soldiers a proper burial, gratitude for fighting for the freedom of people they had never met. Black residents of Charleston organized a May Day ceremony attended by nearly 10,000 people, including about 3,000 Black school children newly enrolled in freedmen's schools, along with mutual aid societies, Union troops, Black ministers, and white Northern ministers. American history professor David Blight said of that day, quote, "African Americans invented Memorial Day. Black Americans recently freed from slavery, announcing to the world with their flowers, their feet, and their songs what the war had been about. What they basically were creating was the Independence Day of a second American Revolution," end quote. The tapestry of history woven by the Black community to honor the losses that gave them freedom has been significantly altered by the dominant white society, covering over the meaning of the war to erase the mention of slavery, to weave a new story that takes out the element of racial oppression. As we learn and share the real story, we return integrity to the fabric of our national history. Another example of weaving our story, one that is closer to home, is the woven art titled Mountains, Beauty, Strength, Endurance, Serenity Everlasting, which was created by congregation members in the past. Many of you will remember it from the wall near the piano in our sanctuary on Sauk Hill Road. The weaving was kept safe during the move, and it will be installed here in our new space after the service. The project was organized and led by UU Catskills member Judith Chase. Jim Chase built the loom on which the tapestry would be woven. Laura Greendale helped with the design, and her daughter, Holly Dales, assisted in warping the loom. And you now know what that means. 17 weavers contributed their skill and creativity to the project, creating a work of enduring beauty and love. And a service to dedicate the weaving was celebrated on March 3rd, 1991, with songs, prayers, and readings honoring the earth and the natural environment around us as they are depicted in the weaving. You can put it down now, your arms are going to get tired. For today's service, we invited members of the Woodstock Weavers Guild to speak about weaving and to honor Judith and her leadership in creating the tapestry that echoes the mountains that shelter the spaces where we live and worship. Karen Wyks-Lindsay will begin with her reflection on weaving and how it has enriched her life and the art of this community. Karen.
Good morning. My name is Karen. My pronouns are she, her. So some personal words here for my journey as a weaver. I was first introduced to weaving in art college as a textile design major. I chose this major because it combined color, design, and texture. At the time, in the mid-70s, woven wall hangings were popular, and I was taken with the inventive woven wall pieces that were created by the senior students for their theses. I imagined myself doing work like that someday. In my late 20s, I worked for master weaver Randall Darwall, weaving his gorgeous, colorful silk scarves and growing in my skills and awareness of what was possible in the art. Later, when my girls were in school, I was happy working for Margret Handwovens, helping her produce scarves and shawls, selling them at shows, got the wrong line, and making lifelong friendships with my coworkers. I also designed and wove scarves and shawls, selling them at shows in the tri-state area and New England, and teaching weaving to both adults and children. Through the years, I've expressed myself as an artist through other mediums, paint, collage, through mixed media, quilting, sewing, and more. I think of myself as an artist first, and the medium I choose is what I'm drawn to at the time. Weaving and working in fiber seems to be something I keep coming back to. In most of my life up to this point, it seemed that meeting other weavers was a rare occurrence until I moved to this part of the Hudson Valley. The number of weavers in our guild and the variety and level of skills is staggering. Although I learned to weave 50 years ago, I can still feel like a beginner in the company of this group. There's always more to learn. Weaving has both artistic and technical elements. It involves math, formulas, and calculations. It also requires a lot of patience at times, as in threading the loom. Frequently, there are mistakes. Sometimes these can be accepted as part of the cloth, an unexpected turn, which can bring a fresh new result. Other times, mistakes call for undoing hours of work and a do-over of the threading or a portion of the weaving. We can be stymied by an issue we can't seem to solve. There are times when a call to a fellow weaver can bring a fresh insight or maybe just compassion and commiseration to say they've been there too, that can make all the difference. All of us in the Woodstock Weavers are grateful to Judith and the core members of the group who started the guild. Their generosity and sharing their knowledge is passed down and enriches the lives of our members and the communities in which we live. And I have a couple of, just simple scarves that I made, plain weave and block and pinstripe. So we'll have our weavings over here after the service if you would like to take a closer look. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And now we hear from Bev Nerenberg about the story of her experience with Judith and the Weavers Guild.
Hi, I'm Bev Nerenberg, and I'm honored to have been asked to come here today. I brought a few weavings with me, but I'll get to that. Judith, dear friend, we met about 12 years ago. I had recently moved from rural Pennsylvania to Woodstock, New York. I went to the Sheep and Wool Festival in October 2012, and I learned about the Woodstock Weavers. Soon thereafter, I went to a meeting. The people there at the time, Judith, Ingrid, Hetty, Rita, Peg, and Nan, formed a tight-knit group that I thought was a dying guild, but I love the explorations they continued to do. We now have over 50 members with wonderfully diverse interests and experiences. How wrong was I? From a recent book we talked about at our guild meeting, Textiles Weave Through Our Everyday Lives. The universality of fabric has made it a potent messenger across global contexts, whether communicating personal stories or conveying hidden messages. Embedded in a single thread is the material history of the medium, revealing ideas relating to gender, labor, value, ecology, ancestral knowledge, and histories of oppression, extraction, and trade. Threads and weaving manifest an enduring spirit of hope. In the end, we're all individual threads woven into Judith's life and she into ours. Judith is fiercely independent, but reaching the point when her friends can help. She is a superb weaver, technologically more than proficient. She learned from a master weaver and has done it all from plain weave to tapestry to intricate patterns. She's also a great teacher and generous in sharing her knowledge, and she loves to continue to learn. Judith appreciates weavers who have different interests. Some of her weavings have graced the spaces occupied by UUC, and I'm sure many of you remember them. I brought in a few small items that Judith wove to show you how she takes a simple weave and with color and texture makes a wonderful cloth. I'll pass these around. Thank you. This is plain weave with a little design. It's in lavenders and purples, and it's a wonderful lavender sachet. Thank you.
So it picks up for the people on Zoom.
Made from lavender growing in one of her son's gardens. So you have to smell it. This is a little towel that I use as a kitchen towel. And what I love about it is small things that one would not think of. To make an interesting pattern, she used a different weight or texture of yarn, and her use of color is superb. And this is another very simple pot holder, not the kind we used to weave, but nevertheless beautiful. It's in plain weave, and yet it's interesting because of her color choices and the way she put them together.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also wore a bag that was woven in Peru. It's made of alpaca, and it's very typical of the designs that you can see in Peruvian weaving. Okay. Judith supported her habit. Some in the guild refer to weaving as an addiction, by teaching weaving and selling her weavings at craft fairs and the Woodstock Guild shop. She is a great friend. I love that she speaks her mind. She has a wonderful family and myriad friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. I now invite Carol Wood to share her reflection on weaving and the relationships that hold us close. Carol.
I brought a bigger bag. Thank you. It's great to be here. We were asked to talk about our weaving in our lives, and then Judith as a friend as well. So my mother's loom in the living room when I was growing up was a 4-shaft Herald floor loom. I still have it. She always had fabric in process with balls of yarn and various tools nearby. That's how it is with weavers and weaving and fiber arts or crafts, projects in process, and the colors and textures and touch of fleece, yarn, and fabric. When I first met Judith Chase, I'm going to start weeping. That's how it was with her too. She brought a wonderful array of blankets, shawls, and woolly things to show and tell at the Woodstock Weavers Guild meetings. You'll sense a theme here. We didn't collaborate ahead of time. Judith and I compared notes about our weaving background, and as it turned out, she learned to weave in Alfred, New York, which was my hometown, Western New York State. She had gone there for college in the late 1950s, and her Latin teacher's wife was a weaving instructor. That's how it happens, is just fate steps in. My parents had moved there at about the same time, and I can imagine that my mother took weaving lessons as well. For Judith, weaving became a way of life. Sometime after her Alfred years, she became a student of Berta Fry in Woodstock. Fry was a well-known weaver, teacher, and writer, a very important person to us weavers. As Judith has said, from earlier teachers, quote, "I learned the steps of dressing a loom and the weaving of what I had in mind to make. With Berta, I became a weaver," with a capital W. Judith and several of Berta Fry's students formed Woodstock Weavers after Berta passed away in 1972. As a regional weaving guild, we now have, I think it's close to 50 members with very diverse interests, and we've all captured this together. Our members range from beginners to those who have been or are professional weavers. And weaving can be a mostly solitary endeavor. Our monthly gatherings, workshops, and special events reflect a desire to learn, share, and to build community, kind of what we've been talking about today. So I first met Judith through the Guild about 7 years ago, and we formed an instant friendship over our connection to Alfred and a love of fibers. And she and my husband share a Czech ancestry, so they're always greeting each other in Czech, which I can't understand. I'm never quite sure what they're saying. My mother taught me to knit when I was young, and knitting was my focus for many years. My fiber work extended to teaching, knitting, and natural dyeing. I took a weaving class in college. Even after hosting weaving retreats at my studio, I was not a weaver with a capital W. It is through the Woodstock Weavers and through Judith that I have gained confidence in my own voice as a weaver. Reflecting the sermon earlier, some of my projects are political in nature. Observations on current events, for example, like Millions of Faces, which I'll show you, which highlights facial recognition systems, and Whipped Peter, quote unquote, a tribute to Congressman John Lewis and a protest against slavery, on display now at City Hall. There's a great exhibit there called, I think it's just called Freedom, around the programming that they're doing on Sojourner Truth up at City Hall here. For more than 50 years, and I think it's actually closer to 60 years, Judith has helped our members become weavers. She is our mentor and inspiration in the spirit of our weaving foremothers. So I brought a few things also. This is a piece that actually my mother wove. I never saw her weaving, I only saw her loom. And she obviously had done this at a workshop. Yeah, it's just beautiful colors. Her sense of color was phenomenal. This is fabric that I wove, and you're welcome to come up and see these later. This is linen. It's dyed with indigo and black walnuts. And I did a program earlier for Women's History Month that I was researching slave cloth. And this is what I wove kind of in tribute to that concept. Earlier, our guild, we do challenges every year, and so these are napkins that we did an exchange. So each guild member exchanged a series of napkins with each other, and yeah, that's fine. And these are we call the patterns that we use drafts, and so these drafts were actually written by Berta Fry. So we went around there, and then this is. The political piece that I did, it's called Millions of Faces. And if you look at facial recognition systems right now, it's a little scary. And this guy here is Woody Bledsoe. He invented facial recognition software in the 60s. And I did this whole graph and everything. And then I realized, or I learned that there was another Woody Bledsoe who was a musician. And I had done all this work on graphing his face, and it was the wrong face. So I have cards for the guild as well.
It gives a new meaning to facial recognition. Thank you, Carol and Bev and Karen, so much. You bring the weaving alive. We are weaving our lives, our hearts and our lives, the bright and dark threads of our journey through. In our gathering, we weave a blanket of light, a basket to hold all that's true. As we celebrate the art of weaving, creating stories and connecting community, let us express our gratitude to Judith, to those who created this tapestry, and to the Woodstock Weavers Guild for the beauty they weave in this world, connecting us all in the tapestry of life. Judith, this is for you and for the Weavers Guild.